Tonight, we're taking a chance as we tap into our spiritual side. Anybody know what their spiritual side is? That's good. I am not talking about religion. I am not talking about religion. I am a Christian. That is my faith. I'm not asking you to be a Christian. If you want to be one, I can show you how. But it is not required. I have respect for all faiths. All faiths. But what I'm talking about is not faith or religion. I'm talking about spirituality. So I want to get clear on what I mean by that. It means, my definition is living your life with an open heart through love. Living your life with an open heart. Allowing yourself to align with the values of tolerance, acceptance, of harmony, of cooperation, and reverence for life. Life. Now, there is a force, energy, consciousness, divine thread, I believe, that connects all spiritually to all of us, to something greater than ourselves. Now, if you're living in the space of an open heart, you have a blessed life. Anybody know what I'm talking about?
Oh, she said a mouthful there. So let's get into it. Let's not waste any time. First of all, we need to, in order to have a conversation, we need to be able to define words, understand what they mean, and always, always, always respect those meanings. We are not communicating if we don't understand and share a common definition of the words that we're using to communicate with each other. So let's start right at the top. She talks about spirituality and religion. She says that she's talking about spirituality, not religion. So religion is defined as the belief in and worship of a superhuman controlling power, especially a personal god or gods, a particular system of faith and worship, a pursuit or interest to which someone ascribes supreme importance. Now that's, using the word religion to describe someone's practice of any other thing. They have a religious fervor about, buying boots or something like that. So then what does spirituality mean? When she says, I'm talking about spirituality and not religion, so she's not talking about the practice of the worship of a supreme being. She's talking about spirituality. It's a noun form of the word spiritual, of and relating to or affecting the human spirit or soul, as opposed to material or physical things, of or relating to religion or religious belief. Noun, a religious song or of a kind. So that one doesn't apply here. It's not a noun. So now we have an understanding of what it is that she's talking about when she says she's talking about spirituality. She's trying to separate the dealings of the human soul or spirit from the practice of relating to, worshiping, and interacting with a supreme being or God, which she as a Christian, since we're all dealing in the same family here, Oprah says she's a Christian in this clip. She says she practices Christianity. So she's talking about the worship and relationship to a supreme being, otherwise known to us Christians as our Father in heaven, his son, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. She says she's talking about a consciousness, and that's where we go off the rails. First, she tries to separate religion from spirituality, which in practice, religion is many different things. There are many different denominations in the Protestant form of worshiping our Creator. That's not what she's going into, though. She's not delineating between different, Lutherans and Protestant Church of America. She's not delineating between that. She's actually saying there's something else. There's a universe out there, and we can communicate with that universe using our spiritual consciousnesses. That universe has a consciousness, and we can relate to it that way. Now, that's New Age spirituality. That's not Christianity. She also says at the beginning of her statement that all faiths are equal. Now, that's kind of like saying all people are equal. Conceptually speaking and constitutionally speaking, all people are equal under the Constitution and should be treated as such under the laws. But when we're talking about all faiths, if you are a practicing Christian, then all faiths are not equal to you, because only one faith can lead you to a relationship with your Heavenly Father that results in you having an eternity where you get to spend that in his presence, praising and glorifying him forever. All other faiths don't provide a means to do that. And so here's the crux of where she goes wrong and stays wrong on this issue. Oprah Winfrey, if she were to run for the presidency, would be running for the presidency and practicing and spreading around the practice of a new age spirit consciousness type of a movement, if you will, that she has engaged in propagating and has infected the minds of millions of other Americans with. She has huge events across the country that I'm just learning all of this recently, because remember, I turned her off over 10 years ago, like closer to 15 years ago. I turned her off and stopped paying attention to what she was doing, because she was talking this stuff back then too. And make no mistake about it, she says when she was 27 or 28 years old is when she first realized that she didn't believe God could be jealous. If he was love and he was justice and he was a holy God, he couldn't also be a jealous God. So in that moment at 27 or 28 years old, when she heard that, she decided, I don't know if these people are doing this right. And she started down the path at that point. Now, after that, she's on this path, she says, but after that, she's on TV telling suburban moms, hey, you know what? I love God. I read the Psalms. I read the Proverbs. I believe that the integral to my success, the reason I was able to come out of such extreme poverty and rise to such prominence in broadcasting and then have my own television show and become really one of the most powerful people in media and in the world is because I practiced Christianity. I relied on my Heavenly Father, yada, yada, yada. While she was saying all those things, she was internally having these doubts about whether or not the different attributes that Christians read about in the Bible and attribute to our Father in heaven, whether or not those could be true. So she was doing a bit of lying, a bit of dissembling for the camera. Now, if you can get past that and you're back with me here in this moment where we're trying to figure out how she separates spirituality in and of itself from the worship of our Creator, then you've already come to the conclusion that this can't be Christianity that she's practicing. So how does she then go from what she's doing with that to ascending to the presidency? I posit that she cannot, but we have to deal in the real world. A friend of mine shared with me today. You guys know I've been saying I want to get her on the program, and I have to make that put that down on my list here on the break. Suzanne Venker, author. She's out of the Schlafly family, really wonderful author. She shared with me that Rasmussen Reports has already, and we actually like Rasmussen Reports. We trust a little bit of Rasmussen Reports. They have actually already done the heavy lifting, and they've compared the favorability rankings for President Trump against Oprah Winfrey, and they show the winner being Oprah Winfrey, that she would be the likely winner over President Trump if the 2020 election were held today. But there are a lot of undecideds, and they found 14% of Americans are undecided, 38% would choose Trump, and 48% of likely U.S. voters would opt for Winfrey. Now, that's a really nice thing for us to look at right now in this moment, because Oprah Winfrey is an unknown commodity. Yes, she's well known. Yes, all Americans know who she is, but all Americans haven't been subjected to a bruising political campaign where her opponent punches back twice as hard as he's hit. Remember, it took President Trump to dispatch the Bush family finally from their perch, to get them to stop thinking that they were in a monarchy. It took President Trump to finally disabuse us of the notion of, at the time, it was Mitt Romney. I have a feeling that's going to come back on us. So I say to you, and we'll continue this in the third segment. We have our guest up next, Phil Kerpen, president of the American Commitment. I say to you that there's so much more for you to know about Oprah Winfrey. And that once the American people get to know her, and I mean all of her, because she shared everything. She hasn't held anything back. And once it's framed from the mouth of President Trump and the Republican Party under the leadership of President Trump, that those numbers that Rasmussen just gave us would change, and not for the better for Miss Winfrey. We're not looking for a pseudo-religious, Christianity killing person to come into the White House right now. That's not what America needs.
5 seconds.
We'll talk about that and more when we get back. Stay right there.
If you like trips where you have to plan everything, then maybe our tour is not for you. Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman. with American Family Association and American Family Radio. Of course, I'm talking about our spiritual heritage tours of Washington, D.C., Mount Vernon, and then a separate trip to Williamsburg, Virginia. And guess what? We take care of everything. All you have to do is, as they say, show up. But we take these spiritual heritage tours twice a year, once in June and once in September. Stephen McDowell of the Providence Foundation, who is a historian, will be joining us for both tours, and he will tell you everything you need to know about the places, the times, the events that we will experience on these tours of Washington, D.C. and Williamsburg. For all the information, just go to the website spiritualheritagetours.com. That's spiritualheritagetours.com for everything.
Hi, I'm Crawford Ritz with a Legacy Moment. For years, God called me to an itinerant ministry, and that meant I traveled a great deal and did a lot of speaking. Interestingly enough, I've never asked for a speaking engagement in my life. It's a conviction that the Lord placed on my heart years ago when I first began to travel and speak. In fact, I've never asked for or sought a position of leadership I've ever had. I think this is God's way of helping me remember that He's in charge. I love the story of Hannah in 1 Samuel chapter 1. Hannah was barren and her womb had been closed up and seemed like it was impossible for her to give birth to a child. But God opened her womb. And in chapter 2, Hannah sings an incredible song of thanksgiving. Listen to 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 3. Do not let arrogance come out of your mouth, for the Lord is a God of knowledge, and with Him actions are weighed. Then down in verse 8, He raises the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with nobles. Hannah sees the magnificent greatness and sovereignty of our awesome God. She realizes He's on His throne and that no one can move God once His mind is made up. This song of praise teaches us three very important lessons. Number one, God has the full picture and He knows the whole story, so we can trust Him implicitly. Number two, God promotes. He is the best agent you'll ever have. And then number three, God does not need our strength. He's strong enough. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. Submit, respect, and follow your leaders. But never forget that God is in charge, and He will always take care of you.
Thanks, Crawford, and thank you for listening to today's Legacy Moment, a production of Moody Radio, a ministry of Moody Global Ministries.
Yeah, we are the colors outside of the lines, and we paint a picture so one of a kind. Attention, we call.
All right, welcome back to the program, everybody. So good to be with you today here on Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk. UrbanFamilyTalk.com/Stacy is where the podcasts are located. And AFR.net is the website for American Family Radio, where you can find out more about the programs on all of the channels that nationwide that are covered. Fantastic. And so right now it's my pleasure to welcome our first guest for today, Phil Kerpen, President of American Commitment. Phil, thanks so much for coming on with us today.
Hey, great to be with you, Stacy.
It's good to talk to you. So let's talk about this. I'm not sure what our subject is for today. Are we talking about ending the illegal Obamacare exemption? I think we talked about that last time you were on.
Whatever you want to talk about. I think it was supposed to be the tax reform bill, but there's a million other things going on. Pretty much anything related to economics or regulation, or I'm pretty much following what's going on. So whatever you and your listeners are most interested in, I'm happy to go with the tax bill or with something else.
Okay, perfect. Let's go with the tax bill to start off with. I see some ramifications of the tax bill already in full effect, namely the hundreds of companies, over 100 companies that have announced that they're going to be sharing extra bonuses and extending their purchases here in this country for capital expenditures, that type of stuff. It's really been just good news all around. How do you see this playing out as we approach tax season for 2017? Obviously, these things take effect in 2018. But in 2017, April, we're all going to have to pay up. So what do you see people thinking?
Yeah, this is going to be this filing season will be the last year under the old tax code. And so you're not going to see much of a difference yet, if any, when you do your tax returns in April. Where you are going to see a difference is in your paycheck, potentially starting in February. That's the IRS claims they're going to have the new tax code implemented in the withholding tables in time for February paychecks. I will believe it when I see it, because government moves very slowly, so it might take a little longer than that. But that's their goal. They hope to have it ready for February paychecks, which means that when people, if they get it done when they say they're going to, and ADP and Paychex and the other payroll processing companies and smaller employers all get it implemented, then people are going to get paychecks that have a smaller tax bite and a larger take-home pay when that is implemented. So that could happen as soon as next month, and I think people are going to notice that. The other thing they're going to notice, really two other things they're going to notice. One is what you mentioned, which is wages are going up, bonuses and wages, and we've seen this sort of take kind of one industry at a time, where you'll have a major player announce it and then kind of everyone else scrambles to match it. And it was sort of first it was the internet service providers, AT&T and Comcast, and then it was the banks, and pretty much every major national and regional bank has now kind of followed suit on bonuses and wage increases and so forth. And then it was the airlines. And the airlines all started announcing that they're doing it, and I think we're going to still see more industries that do that. And there have been a lot of other examples. There's a list, Americans for Tax Reform. Grover Norquist's group has been keeping updated. John Karcher works over there. They've got over 100 companies now that have announced bonuses and raises that directly cited the tax cut as the reason for it. And I think we're going to eventually see almost everyone get a raise, because what happens is workers see other companies giving out raises, and they kind of go to the boss and say, are we going to get that here? And if not, I might go look for another job somewhere else. And competition sort of forces everyone, because every company's getting the tax cut under this bill. So the competition, the competitive pressure, is going to force almost all employers to raise wages. And if they don't, people are going to have other opportunities. There's going to be a lot of economic opportunity out there in a booming economy, where if for some reason your boss does not want to raise wages, or your company's refused, you might be able to find something somewhere else, where that hasn't necessarily been the case for the last decade or so, where the economy's been a little bit rougher. And so I think people are going to see that direct tax cut maybe as soon as February, when the withholding tables are reset. They're going to see the benefits of higher wages. And the other thing that we've seen that's really interesting in the last few days is most people are also going to see lower electric bills, because almost all of the electric utilities, kind of one after another in recent days, have been saying, look, our tax bill is going down a lot under this bill, and so we're going to file amended rates to lower the rates that we charge, because most electric utilities have a regulated rate of return, and so they're only allowed to make so much on the capital they have invested. If their taxes go down, then their rates that they charge need to go down, although they typically have to file for approvals and that kind of thing. So we could really have pretty great scenario for a lot of American families, where they're looking at higher wages with a lower tax bite coming out of those wages, and lower electric bill. So it's going to be, I think, increasingly difficult for the Democrats who unanimously voted against this to explain why they did that. I think the politics of this, where they thought they could just sort of demagogue and bash and count on kind of the media carrying their narrative, it's going to crash pretty hard into reality here, and is already starting to, I think.
Okay, so is it going to be retroactive? When you talked about them getting everything updated for February, you'll have already gotten paid for January. Will they retroactively kind of take care of January, or what will be the ramifications?
No, you're going to need to true up. Whenever they get a reset, whether it's for February, maybe it takes a little longer. What they'll do is they'll do the new withholding based on your situation, just for the rest of the year going forward. To the extent that you paid more in the beginning of the year before they implemented it, you get that back in a refund when you file your return next year. Is typically what they do. Because I remember when the Bush tax cuts came in, they came in mid-year. I think it was July back then, and they did not try to correct for the withholding that had already taken place. They said they'd true it up in the refunds, and so I think that's how it would happen again. Is right now people are getting over withheld. Almost all people, since almost everyone gets a tax cut under this bill. Right now, you're getting over withheld because they're using the old tables. Once it corrects, they won't try to figure out what you overpaid until you file your taxes next year.
Okay, so for the next thing, I want to talk about Ted Cruz filing a bill to try to make the tax cuts permanent. Do you see that going anywhere?
Well, it's really interesting because the big talking point the Democrats settled on during this debate was, well, the business tax cuts are permanent, but the tax cuts for individuals, they sunset in 2025. And the reason the Republicans wrote the bill that way is you've got all kinds of different rules in the Senate, and they were using the reconciliation process as part of the budget process, and because of that, they needed to sunset some of the bill, or else it would have required 60 votes instead of 50, and the Democrats would have been able to block it with a filibuster. And so what the Republicans basically figured out, or the calculation they made was, look, let's do the business tax cuts permanent, because otherwise that expiration, Democrats would go to the floor and it would probably actually take effect. But let's make the individual cuts expire, because Democrats wouldn't dare politically oppose us extending those, and that way we'll be able to end up, in the long run with everything being made permanent. And the Democrats, they kind of took this weird tactic, and they sort of had their media allies saying, this bill's outrageous because the tax relief is permanent for businesses, but it's temporary for individuals, and we're going to get this tax hike in 8 years. And so what Cruz is doing, which I think is very smart, is instead of waiting until we get close to the expiration and then putting the pressure on and it being made permanent, which is what happened with the Bush tax cuts, of course, is that ended up being bipartisan. They were all made permanent except for people over, I think, $400,000. So basically they were made permanent for everyone but the very top. What Cruz is saying is, look, let's not wait until we get to the expiration year, and then we all kind of know what'll happen. Let's have a vote on doing it right away, right now, so we can sort of call Democrats out and have a vote and put them to the test, and we'll sort of point out that we all do want to make these permanent. It was just for procedural reasons that the bill didn't do that, and if Democrats go along with that and they say they are against the expiration, then they could pass it, and we wouldn't even have to worry about this expiration looming out there in the future. And it's a pretty smart move, I think, by Cruz, especially when you have people like Bernie Sanders going out and saying, they should be made permanent. Well, let's see if Democrats actually think so in a vote. And if they don't, I think that would be pretty hard to explain to people. So I think it's a smart move by Ted Cruz, and I hope that McConnell will allow a vote on it. I think it'd be very interesting. Put Democrats in a real tough spot.
I love it because I'd forgotten that he'd said that. So that's why I broke out laughing, because you just reminded me that he was the one trying to find something bad to say. And the only thing he could find was that the Republicans gave you a tax cut, which will eventually be taken away from you. And now Ted Cruz is like, yeah, you know what? You're right about that. That's pretty terrible. Let's fix it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't think you're going to lose any Republican votes on that. So, put Democrats to the test. I mean, they'd see if it can get to 60. You would need 9 Democrats to vote for it. But, you got more than that just who are running for re-election in states that Trump won. So I think it's a very smart vote to have.
So, okay. Now I want to kind of flip over to, and I know you're a policy wonk and you're, taxes and tax policy and all that stuff. But do you have any thoughts at all that you would care to share about the possibility of Oprah Winfrey, who's been satisfied to swan around among us and just grace us with her presence, generally speaking, now considering a run for the presidency of the United States?
Well, I don't think the Democrats are going to beat President Trump with the politicians. Okay. So it makes sense that they're looking for sort of non-politician, celebrity, high charisma alternatives, and obviously they got people like Mark Zuckerberg, who's been considering it, the Facebook founder. Mark Cuban was rumored for a while, but then he said if he ran, it would be as a Republican. So I don't know how that would work. And I think that their sort of thinking is, look, we need star power. Okay, what President Trump showed is that star power can overwhelm almost every other factor in a campaign context. And, he was able to be sort of the story through basically the whole 2-year election cycle. Nobody cared what anyone else said or did because he was more interesting, more newsworthy, and so forth. And I think that Democrats want their version of that. They want sort of the superstar, pop culture, much larger than politics figure so that they can counteract kind of President Trump being kind of the center of attention and the center of gravity politically. And I think that someone like Oprah Winfrey is very attractive for that reason. But I don't think she could beat President Trump. And I don't think ultimately she's going to think it's worth her while and her time and money to do, because it's pretty hard to run for president. And if we've learned anything from seeing Donald Trump do it, you end up with half the country hating you or more.
Oh, you hit
and
all
I don't
the
know
points.
if that's something she wants to do.
I don't know what you're trying to do here. Put me out of business, Phil, but you hit all the points. Okay, so this morning I've heard from people that I consider to be very, 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 very smart and on top of things, to include yourself, echo the same sentiments. You hit all three of the points that I think are most important here. Obviously, if you ask people 4 years ago if Donald Trump, if they'd vote for him over whoever, a lot of people would have said, sure, I'll vote for Donald Trump, because he hadn't declared and he wasn't political. He was just generally popular back then. Not as popular as Oprah, but maybe so. I've never compared. The same thing with Oprah. But the most important thing that you've hit on there, in my opinion, is that in what universe would you, if you were Oprah Winfrey, want to lower yourself to become viscerally hated by 50% of Americans or more by running for the presidency? And what does she benefit from that? She already lives in a 55,000 square foot mansion. The White House isn't any bigger than her house. She's got nothing to gain from being the president of the United States. And I don't think she could beat Trump, because he would treat her the way he treated Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, who were all fine people, but they were all eviscerated by Donald Trump on the campaign trail because they had to be in order for him to win.
Oh, it would be very painful for her, win or lose. There's no question. And I agree with you. I don't see why she would do it. I think she benefits from she enjoys the speculation, obviously, but I think she doesn't have much incentive to actually do it. That said, 2015, when my friend Corey Lewandowski called me and said Donald Trump was running for president, I thought he was joking. So I don't have a great track record necessarily on predicting who might be serious or not.
Well, I'm fine with that. I'm just asking for your opinion, and I guess one of the things that I'm looking for in all of these things is I would prefer a serious contender, someone who maybe it is a celebrity of some sort. But what about, let's just look at it this way. Someone who brings something to the table that is different for the American people to choose from, that is actually interested in politics. I don't see Oprah Winfrey as actually being interested in politics. She's interested in changing people's lives. We can agree on whether or not she's good at that. But we're not looking for a Sherpa or a lifestyle guru to be the president. We need someone who's serious, someone who will take the serious business of governing our nation into hand and be competent at it. And I don't think she's going to be one of those people. So last question, you have to give me your quick answer. The Fire and Fury book by this horrible person, Wolf. How long do you think we have to put up with them talking about that? Another week, 2 weeks, long and short?
Oh, I think you're going to have another couple of weeks now, but then you're probably going to have a movie next year. This is how this stuff works, isn't it? Yeah. So I don't think it goes away. They'll recycle all these storylines and everything else and so forth. And for what it's worth, I've known Steve Bannon for a number of years, going back to when I was at Americans for Prosperity, and he was doing a movie about Sarah Palin, and he came to our event. So I've known him for a long time. I think there are obviously a lot of downsides in his volatile personality and all this kind of stuff, and I don't like these quotes and things he did in this book, but I also think there are a lot of upsides with Steve, and he was probably the key reason that the president withdrew from the Paris Agreement, which is one of the most important accomplishments of the first year, and so I'm not as gleeful about his sort of self-destruct as a lot of people are, because I saw a lot of positives with him as well as the negatives.
I can't say I loved the president's position on immigration during the campaign. I have to agree with you, Phil. It's always great to chat with you. Thank you for rescheduling and accommodating us and coming on today. We really appreciate your time. Phil Kerpen, President of American Commitment. Talk to you again soon.
All right, have a good one.
You too. All right, guys. That is the first two segments of the first hour of Stacy on the Right here on Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio. We'll be back with more right after these messages. Keep it here.
Part of growing in Christ is learning how to encourage others. In doing so, you always gain strength for your own journey. It's kind of like you can't pray for someone in earnest and remain angry at them. You may not like what they've done, but the presence of God has a way of sifting the wrath right out of you. You can't encourage someone else in your walk and remain numb to the encouraging words yourself. As you encourage others, you begin to see that all things are possible in Christ Jesus. Your obstacles become visibly obtainable. In this world of self-centeredness and all about me, be extraordinary. Don't be the norm. Each day, stop and take a me poll to determine just where you are in your walk with the Lord. Encourage your brother or sister in the Lord in that area and watch God do some amazing things in your life. Your deliverance is resting in the power of your tongue. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Tony Johnson. Connect with us at urbanfamilytalk.com.
My name's Eric. I started using acid to find some other realm of consciousness. But when I came into Teen Challenge and I gave up drugs, I gained a better real life than any mental trip I've taken.
If you know an adult or teenager who's struggling with a chemical addiction, Teen Challenge can help. Call us today at 417-581-2181 or reach us online at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
The church has to take the lead in ensuring that men are properly trained for fatherhood. We have an epidemic in which boys are not growing up with their fathers. So as Christian men, we have to stand in the gap and make up the hedge so that our communities are not destroyed. When we see fatherhood as a blessing and not an inconvenience, we will see children as spiritual weapons in our arsenal. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. Join us in the battle to strengthen fatherhood. UrbanFamilyTalk.com.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist and creation seminar speaker with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, where do comets come from?
Chris, the short-period comets, like Halley's Comet, can make only a few trips around the sun before they completely disintegrate. Yet there are a number of short-period comets. Obviously, to support a billions of years old solar system, evolutionists need an inexhaustible supply of short-period comets. Thus, they had proposed a belt of comets called the Kuiper Belt orbiting the sun near Neptune. They had no evidence of such a zone of comets, but figured it must be there to salvage their theory. Well, now we have the telescopes and spacecraft able to search this zone, and we found less than 4% of what they need. Thus, this dreamland of comets needed to salvage Big Bang ideas has been disproved. What hasn't been disproved is the creation story. That's the one that's given back in Genesis.
For more on creation, visit our website at www.icr.org.
I don't need no stranglers to be washed in his blood.
It is a very interesting conversation that's happening right now.
Didn't you bet your first and second born children?
Yes, yes.
I thought that's what it was.
That's right.
So what about what Stedman said?
Well, I do think that's interesting because Stedman says that he thought the reporter said to him, would she make a good president? And he said, absolutely she would. That's how he interpreted the question, because this is the thing. Stedman would never so cavalierly say absolutely she would do it. It's up to the people. He would never do that. I got emails from people yesterday. But wait, no, I got emails from people yesterday that said, is Stedman being strategic or is he being supportive? He is nothing but supportive. He would never just throw it out there like that. What were you going to say?
Well, I'm going to ask you the same tough question that I ask guests on this show. In fact, Stedman did say she would absolutely do it. It's up to the people. That's what he said.
Yeah, he did say it is up to the people. But I'm telling you, his interpretation of the question was, would she? He thought she would. He thought the reporter was saying, would she be a good president?
Okay, is she considering it?
No, I absolutely don't think that her position has changed. I don't. You know, I was up talking to her very late last night. I do think this, though, guys. I do think she's intrigued by the idea. I do think that. I also know that after years of watching the Oprah show, you always have the right to change your mind. I don't think at this point she is actually considering it. But listen, there are people who said they want to be her campaign manager, who want to quit their jobs and campaign for her. She loves this country and would like to be of service in some way. But I don't think that she is actively considering it.
For the record, that is
I don't think she's actively considering it this time.
That is a change from what we heard in October.
It's not a change from her, Jeff. That's a change from me. It's not a change from her.
Let me Fair enough. What you think? Welcome back to the program, everybody. Stacy on the right here on UrbanFamilyTalk.com, AFR.net. which is coincidentally where you can go and donate to preborn ministries, which we are partnering with this week to bring ultrasounds to young women who are considering abortion. Please consider giving $28 or the gift of $140, which provides 5 free ultrasounds. 877-616-2396, afr.net to donate. So just one quick thing, because we're going to go to the phones. We're going to take a call, but we're going to continue to unpack this whole idea. Why should we commit to Oprah Winfrey as a nation when after 32 years, Stedman hasn't committed? I'm looking at an article here on businessinsider.com where it says, we look into the relationship of Oprah Winfrey and Stedman Graham, who say avoiding marriage helped them stay together for 32 years. Please sit down. Americans know better than that. We know that it's not avoiding marriage. It's making a commitment. That's what helps you to stay together for long periods of time. I think her billions of dollars may have helped Stedman to stick around for 32 years. What do you think? But he still hasn't made the ultimate decision. They got engaged way back in 1992, but they decided ultimately against getting married. They've been dating since 1986. So if after 32 years, Stedman can't commit to Oprah, why should we commit to Oprah? I mean, what makes us so different than Stedman? He's actually been inside her house. He's been inside her condo. He's been inside her private plane. He knows the ins and the outs, and he hasn't said, I do. So why should we? Just asking for a friend. All right, let's go to the phones. We have Dave from San Francisco. Dave, thanks for calling into Stacy on the Right.
Outstanding job. You get my Twitters all the time from out here, and I'll tell you what, every single subject I agree with you on. The primary one being the right to life, and your view of Christianity being right on, including the Trinity. And Oprah Winfrey, there's no way that woman should become president. She's the antithesis of not only the Christian viewpoint, but of anything that stands for right. And you are right, as I always tell you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that. You're in San Francisco. How are things out there? I know you're not in the area where there were wildfires and all that, but how are things settling down in the state of California?
Well, yeah, we're up north, and we're not where the fires are, but we had fires here recently in Napa County. A lot of people were killed there. And so I'm doing okay, but as you know, this is a liberal center, and I stick out like a sore thumb. I'm a patrol officer. I work in law enforcement, so I'm very conservative. That's the type of thing that that we like, and I'm pro-Trump. And I do have my issues with the people here, but it's a beautiful place to live, and it's very nice. But obviously, politically and religiously, we're in conflict with these folks.
Yeah,
for the most part.
Thank you for your hard work and service and dedication to the nation, serving as a law enforcement officer. And I have to agree with you. You live in a beautiful place. We visited a few years ago. I'd never been to California, and so San Francisco is the first place in California I've ever been to. We visited the Muir Woods and saw the redwoods, and I mean, it's stunning. San Francisco and the surrounding area is a stunning part of the country. But as stunning as it was, I would not even consider living there because, first of all, it's so expensive. I don't think we could afford it. And second of all, wow, the people, it's like you're in another country there. It's really amazing.
Yeah, it's very expensive to live here. I got lucky. I came in here when things were cheaper and I'm kind of under a rent control scenario, so I'm able to, I don't own. But as far as the people now, you're talking about the varied population, or you're talking about the politics of the people?
The politics, the way people think down there. It's just night and day.
Well, yes. It's very, very, very liberal. Now, it's very difficult for folks like us to live in a place like this because of, the way we think is a complete antithesis of how these folks are. But the funny thing is, since it is live and let live, believe it or not, they let folks like myself alone also. So that's the funny thing is, yes, but there's no camaraderie in that respect. I mean, you were talking about Missouri yesterday, and that's a pretty stronghold, much a stronghold of conservatism and the Republicans. We don't have that here naturally. Now, you were going through that bill on the abortion bill. I mean, that was I did not know about that story. I was shocked that they would do something like that, but I shouldn't be so shocked about the people here believing those things. That is what they believe. It's more like the right to death than it is the right to life. And then these folks are pretty liberal. I mean, they're basically socialist here, and yet somehow I find a way not to fit in with them, but to live here. but we're not in concert with each other, obviously, especially when it comes to the gospel.
Well, and I'm really grateful that you tune into the show and that you listen and that you're still there. I mean, I just wish more people could afford to live in that area that, kind of think in the clear thinking way that we do. But we just have to keep praying that things will change and that Californians can start to be more wise, that more of them would come to Christ and that they would be more wise in their thinking on many different things, including that SB 270, I believe it was. I might be mispronouncing the number there, but I really appreciate you listening to the show.
Yeah.
And thanks for calling in today. It's good to talk to you, Dave.
Okay, I'll be checking back in. You let me know how often, and I'll keep bringing it. Okay.
All right, call in again. It's good to talk to you. So I love getting to hear from people across the country, especially San Francisco. There's hope, you guys. We got Dave holding it down in San Francisco. Probably others who don't choose to call the show but do listen, and it's really great to hear from you guys and to know that you're listening. So we have to continue on with our conversation about Oprah Winfrey. We have to keep that going. And why? Because if she's considering it, then we should be considering her. Don't you think? I mean, would you let just any old person come over and babysit your kids or look after your home while you're out of town? The job of president is just as important as either one of those jobs. And in some ways, it's even more far reaching because at least we have almost complete command and control over our children in the early years. But with our country that we live in, as different as it is from Missouri to San Francisco or, California, as different as those two states are, you have to have a president who knows how to manage both. You have to be able to act as, you're the boss of all the governors, if you will, although, under federalism, each state is its own little sovereign thing. But you have to understand that too. It's just not a job for some nincompoop or some new age, free age person. So again, if Stedman never chose Oprah, why should we? Why are we doing that? Why are we being asked to do it? So let's talk a little bit about this spirituality, because I think we have to understand what she's talking about. Okay. So at one point, the Christian Post was reporting about Oprah Winfrey getting emotional about Jesus and her daily spiritual practice. Now, remember, we here at the Stacy on the Right show believe that words have meaning and words are important, and we want to respect words. We want to respect the definitions, because without them, we are communicating with each other without understanding. We cannot understand each other if you believe certain words mean one thing and I believe they mean another. Now, remember, she's had her own television network, and it's coincidentally entitled OWN. And she's been having these big interfaith programs that claim to examine humankind's ongoing search to connect with something greater than ourselves. Now, we used to call that being a seeker. You're looking for Christ. Now it's, this nebulous enterprise. So this was a show that premiered some time ago. And during that first inaugural program on the Oprah Winfrey Network, she got teary-eyed while answering the question, what is my belief practice today? She also shared this video with her 10 million followers. She said, I feel today, quoting her, CEO of OWN Network, Oprah Winfrey, today I feel the fierce love of all that is God. She paused, she choked up, and then she said so deeply, so strongly, and so purely in my heart that it lifts and carries me. And sometimes I actually feel weightless in the love that is God, because I feel it in all things. I've reached a point in my life where I actually pay attention to every breath and my spiritual practice. Now, remember, usually when you say you're doing a practice, that's a yoga term. Regularly practicing yoga, that's not Christianity. Now, if you like doing yoga, I'm not insulting you. I'm not on that's not this conversation. But we're taking terms from one spiritual type of a thing, namely the practice of yoga, and she's morphing them over and trying to apply them to her practice of Christianity. So she pays attention to every breath. And my spiritual practice is that I awaken. And the first thought is, thank you. And the next thought is, I'm still here in this body. And my heart's desire is to want to live and be in this body, fully present to everything. Not miss this experience of being here now on the planet we call Earth. It's kind of theatrical, isn't it? So then in another video, she goes into her Christian faith, that's what kept her grounded after years of great business success. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Who hasn't been getting a little puffed up on what they've been able to do and then read something in the Bible and thought, woo, I sure was taking credit for that. Thank you, Lord. Thank you for giving me this. I'm sorry. For a second there, I act like I was doing this under my own strength. Who hasn't done that? No, please don't sit down if you think you're above thinking you did something when we really have to give all thanks to God. So that doesn't even sound bad, does it? But here's what she says after that. Everything that I am has come from my belief in that which I call God. So she could have said in God, because we all know who that is, the Christian God, the only God. But she says in that which I call God. Quote, my idea of what that is no longer a person out there or in the sky, but my belief and understanding that there was a force, a presence, a power, a divine entity, a being that loved me. And the very idea of being loved into being is what has kept me grounded, centered, and strong. Quote, I grew up with the stories of Elijah and Elisha and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fire. All of these biblical characters and stories were what I learned before I learned nursery rhymes and before I learned fairy tales. I learned what it means to rely on Jesus and not to rely on your own power. Because of these stories, I grew up knowing that real fear was trusting in only myself, and that being fearless was being able to release my fears into that which is greater than myself and let God handle it. Okay, so that last bit, what can we find wrong with that? Theologically, there's nothing wrong with her saying that Bible stories instructed her that in the worst times possible, you can be in a literal fire and God will be there with you and you will not burn. That's a Bible story that we all learn as children. It's God's word, and it is meant to empower us to go into situations where we should be afraid, deathly afraid, and instead we can walk in power and strength, not our own, but the power and strength and the might of our Father in heaven, knowing that he's going to take care of us from the first step to the last. Amazing. Wish she had stuck with that, but no. She went on. For the earliest part of my life, I didn't know my father. Not growing up with a father, I heard in church that God was my father and that God was the father of us all and that Jesus was God's son. So in my imagination, my way of thinking about God was God is my father and Jesus is his son. So I am his child, which makes me his daughter, which makes Jesus my brother. And that's not all. So look, this isn't one of those situations where I'm gleefully sitting back and, I'm happy that she has this really flawed misunderstanding of what Christianity is. That's not it at all. We as Christians, if we haven't been before, we're just learning about this, we should fervently pray for Oprah Winfrey to come back to salvation and that she would do so in God's good time, but as quickly as possible. But in light of what I've just shared with you, I would say she's not even anywhere close to being someone we want to run for the presidency, even for the Democrats. I mean, come on. Really? So we're not going to get worked up. We'll pray and we'll trust that God has all things in his hand. And we'll be back with more Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk right after these messages. Don't go anywhere.
Family Talk.
In this 40th year celebration of the American Family Association, we invite you to help us remind America once again of the truth behind our national motto, In God We Trust. You can do your part and display your faith with an In God We Trust car decal from the AFA store. Order yours today at afastore.net. That's afastore.net.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. Another federal judge has blocked actions by the Trump administration. This time it is U.S. District Judge William Alsup, a Bill Clinton appointee. And the situation involves Trump's decision to end the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA program. The judge says he wants lawsuits to play out in court. In the meantime, AFA legal counsel Abraham Hamilton III says Congress needs to do something about these judges.
I think it would do the country a great deal of good if the House of Representatives would go on record with demonstrable evidence of these judges exceeding their authority and usurping the powers of, namely, the Congress. I think that would be an important step. It would be a shot across the bow, so to speak, to let these judges know, hey, we know that you are Article III courts. We know that we are the branch charged with keeping you in line. And then should you step outside of your constitutional functions, we will take action.
Hamilton was a guest on AFR's Today's Issues program. A U.S.-born Israeli author and Middle East expert is encouraged by a study that found that under the Trump administration, the majority of refugees now being admitted into the United States are Christians. Chad Groening has more.
As we have reported on AFN, the study of State Department data by the Center for Immigration Studies showed that the number of refugees admitted by the Trump administration in the first 11 months of his presidency fell dramatically by 70%, and 53% were Christians, compared to 32% Muslims. And in FY 2018, admissions from October 1st, 2017 to December 20th, 2017 were even more in favor of Christians, 60% to only 13% Muslim, a ratio of roughly 6-1. David Rubin is the former mayor of the Israeli city of Shiloh. As an American-born Jew, he's been advocating for this kind of change for quite some time.
I can tell you, as one who lives in Israel, that the Christian population is much less problematic than the Muslim population. The Christian population doesn't believe in jihad. They're not going to cause the problems that the Muslim Arabs will. They're not going to be committing terrorist attacks. It's an excellent thing. I've been recommending it for a long time in my book, The Islamic Tsunami.
Rubin says he recommended in that book that the government should change the whole process of immigration.
Not just cutting down on the illegal immigration, even though that obviously is very important. Many of the illegal immigrants are Muslims, but also to change the legal immigration system so that it will favor those from Christian countries and those who are not Muslims, those who will be positive for the United States.
I'm Chad Groening.
There's outrage in Louisiana and worldwide after a teacher is handcuffed and dragged out of a school board meeting for questioning a superintendent's salary. Derek Dennis reports.
It's video that's gone viral around the world of a South Central Louisiana teacher screaming while being handcuffed and removed from a school board meeting. Teacher Daisha Hargrave spoke out at Monday's meeting in Vermilion Parish, questioning why the superintendent should get a raise from his $148,000 a year salary, while there have been no raises for teachers who make on average just $47,000 a year. The school board president ruled Hargrave out of order. She was confronted by a police officer and can be heard screaming as the officer orders her to stop resisting. Video of the incident prompting death threats and a lockdown at the school board offices. The threats coming as far away as South America, Australia, England, and across the U.S. The FBI is investigating. Derek Dennis, Fox News.
And finally, close to 4 years after Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 disappeared, a new search by an American firm.
After the plane vanished in March 2014, search teams from Malaysia, Australia and China covered 46,000 square miles of the ocean without success. Now Malaysia has hired a US company, Ocean Infinity, to scour another 9,000 square miles, roughly the size of Vermont. Transport Minister Liao Tiong Lai.
We hope that we can find answers that we seek for nearly 4 years.
The company will only be paid if it finds the plane. Simon Owen, Fox News.
American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Just as David's mighty man Benaiah chased down a lion into a pit on a snowy day, lion chasers champions uncommon men and women of faith who are unafraid to stand up and speak truth to power in these dark and evil days. Never before has there been such a need for people of faith to draw a line in the sand with the sword of truth. Lion Chasers, the intersection of faith and public policy with Lonnie Poindexter. Weekday mornings at 10 Central on Urban Family Talk. Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
25th Amendment is totally irrelevant to what's going on. It was designed for somebody who had a stroke or was involved. a serious accident and was incapacitated. It requires the vice president, the cabinet, 2/3 of each house of Congress. It's a fool's errand.
It's not going to happen.
Think about it. Of course it's not going to happen. But what they're trying to do, though, is now that they couldn't criminalize political differences, they're trying to pathologize, to psychiatrize political differences. They're trying to say, oh, maybe we can't get him on crime, but we're going to show that he has mental problems, that he's disturbed. A guy on CNN today was talking about he has Alzheimer's, he should be subjected to a neurological exam. That is so dangerous. That's what they did in the former Soviet Union. I was involved representing some dissidents in the Soviet Union who were sent to mental hospitals. They did that in China. They did that in apartheid South Africa.
Did you know Nathan or Solzhenitsyn?
There was a guy.
Solzhenitsyn gave that big speech. I think it might have been at Harvard.
It was at Harvard. I was there. Right. There was a guy named Roy Medvedev who wrote a book about being committed to a psychiatric hospital. But it was a pervasive way that tyrannical governments use the power of psychiatry to try to not answer the merits. We don't want to debate the merits. He's crazy.
The Soviet Union was notorious for this.
They were doing it all the time. And the American Psychiatric Association sent a delegation. And the American Psychiatric Association at the Goldwater case said it is wrong for any psychiatrist ever to diagnose anybody without them examining them. Look, I taught law and psychiatry for 25 years at Harvard. I co-edited the textbook on law and psychiatry. And the first rule of psychiatry is you do not diagnose based on political grounds
funny you say this.
or based on...
years ago, I read the book, The Synthesis of Russian Mind Control Techniques. It's everything you're discussing, and it's all true.
And
every bit of it's true.
So dangerous.
So dangerous.
If you don't like somebody, vote against them.
Exactly.
I voted against Donald Trump.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. Head on over to Stacy on the Right, where you can find the YouTube live stream. You can share it. You can post it on your Facebook pages and social media. Let people see the truth coming straight out of Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio. It's StacyOnTheRight.com, at Stacy on the Right, and on Twitter and Instagram. Call lines are open at 866-963-2037. And thank you so much to everyone who's tuned in on the Facebook pages, the YouTube live stream, and all over the country using terrestrial radio as well as the American Family or Urban Family Talk app that you can use to listen to the show. So what are we listening to there? Well, it's fantastic. It's Mr. Dershowitz back again, and this time he's on Sean Hannity talking about this need for leftists to, first he was a criminal and then he was unfit, and now he's someone who there's got to be some pathological issue that the president has, and that's not normal, by the way. That's not what we're looking for as Americans. You know, fight them hard, fight the policies of the president, fine, but what we're seeing here is the Saul Alinsky tactic of basically just you name it and shame it. You say he's mentally ill, he's got problems, and then go over to MSNBC and listen to Morning Joe. They don't even have a news program anymore. Now they just sit around with Mika going, yes, and Joe Scarborough makes these dire pronouncements about the mental fitness of the president, the physical fitness of the president, his inability to govern, and Mika's yes, and he's she's just what is that? How does that remain on television? I just saw a study out that shows that more black people watch MSNBC than any other news channel. What? How can you even call it news? You have people over there who, like Stephanie Rule, her behavior on television is not journalistic in the least. She doesn't sit there like a broadcaster. She does not sit there as someone who has been through all of these advanced universities and places to get a degree in broadcasting. She doesn't behave like someone who's presenting the news. It's like it's some weird talk show she's hosting that's like, emotionally driven. It's just crazy watching her, which, coincidentally is why I don't. I just catch the clips. So here's something that you're not going to be surprised by. The big three, ABC, CBS, and NBC, those three networks engaged in a feeding frenzy over Michael Wolff's gossip-filled book, and they were eating up the salacious details of the book. I won't say it on here. According to a new study from the Media Research Center, from January 3rd through January 9th, the networks stuffed their evening and morning programs with over 2 hours of coverage from the Wolff book and the subsequent fallout for former Donald Trump aide Stephen Bannon. Now, I thought it was really appropriate that Phil Kerpen expressed concern over what's happened to Steve Bannon. I don't like seeing it at all. But again, I don't have any skin in the game or, sides to pick because I didn't know Stephen Bannon. I'd met Andrew Breitbart on a number of occasions and had dinner with him once here in St. Louis, but I didn't know him well enough to consider him to be a close friend or anything of that nature, which in some ways makes it easier for me because I'm at an arm's length and I could appreciate the work that Andrew Breitbart did and the work that Steve Bannon did on behalf of the president working on his campaign. I can appreciate those things without having emotional connections because I didn't know them. So you've got this, other big news. Are you wondering if anything else is going on in America right now? We'll wonder no more. The FBI reopened the investigation into the Clinton Foundation, the scandal that is the Clinton Foundation. The networks devoted 11 minutes and 10 seconds to that. And the Dow Jones cracked 25,000, gaining 5,000 points in 1 year, something that has never happened in the history of the Dow Jones. That was given 5 minutes and 46 seconds of coverage total. And then you've got the Wolf book coverage, which was given 2 hours, 20 minutes, and 5 seconds of coverage total. CBS was the most obsessed network as it jammed its programs with 49 minutes and 40 seconds of coverage of the Wolf book and Bannon news. ABC wasn't far behind with 46 minutes and 22 seconds on the book and its repercussions for Bannon, and NBC devoted 44 minutes and 3 seconds to the Wolf and Bannon topics. However, the positive stock market news for the Trump administration garnered a hiccup of coverage. ABC gave it 23 seconds. And brief mentions on NBC, 1 minute and 7 seconds, and CBS gave it 4 minutes and 16 seconds. Woo, yay, yip-de-doo from CBS. God bless. Yeah. So my question to you is, don't they have their work down well? They do a good job, don't they? They don't want you to know that the stock market is roaring. They don't want you to know that the GDP is up over 3% and on target to maybe crack 4% this year. They don't want you to think about all the companies giving out bonuses. They don't want you to think about how your paycheck is going to swell up just a little bit in February and stay swole for the rest of this year. No. What they're looking for you to do is be obsessed with this poorly written, unsourced, fact-free book written by a tabloid-type journalist, if we can even call him a journalist. That's what they want you to put your focus on. And I'm here to tell you, because if you're tuned in for the first time today, or if you're just tuning in for the first time this week, or whatever, welcome into the show. Happy New Year. Glad to have you here. I've already determined that I will not read one jot or tittle of that book. I have too many other important things to do. My time is precious and I need to number my days, order my hours, and be where I'm supposed to be in the right place at the right time, doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And that means I don't have time to read that book. And I know it's on WikiLeaks, has published it in its entirety. It's online. But don't you have other things you need to get done right now rather than reading that? I encourage you to go down your list. And when you're checking your stuff off, if you don't see that book on there, that's because it's not meant for you to read. It's a waste of your time. What isn't a waste of your time is to seek out the other news. Like, I'm looking for more details on the reopening of the investigation into the Clinton Foundation. That was definitely influence peddling of the highest kind. And I believe it was a violation of the Logan Act. I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV. But I think there are lawyers, actual real lawyers admitted to the respective bars in the states in which they reside, who can look at this, and members of the Department of Justice, different teams over there who should be investigating this, and people who've done wrong should be brought to justice. Am I right? Okay. All right. I can't hear you guys talking back at me, but I know you're yelling at your radios. Let's go to the phones. We have John from California. John, thank you so much for tuning in today.
Hello, Stacy. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Very good. I just wanted to say, the left, the media, the mainstream media is actually teaching and preaching to anyone leaning left or liberals that we're unfit, just like our presidents. They're painting us with that broad brush, just like Hillary Clinton did when she said we were deplorables. Mm-hmm. And they want to replace us. They'd love to replace us with immigrants and refugees and get us out of here. I mean, they don't want us here. They wish to replace us. They're obsessed. I can't watch CNN. They don't talk about anything but destruction for Trump. You change to MSNBC for a minute, it's destroy Trump. They reject what is plainly visible. The economy's booming, even though the tax measures haven't even taken effect yet. It's just the influence of our president and his leadership, and we see this moves. I mean, I'm waiting for to look at my check in February. I know I'm going to get more money back, and I know when I file my taxes, I'm going to get money that I can put away for the future. And I'm thankful, and I appreciate it, and I thank God for it. And the left doesn't care about God. They don't care about anything. To them, we are the devil. They'd like to push us into the gas chambers if they could, and that's the way they're talking about our leader. How do you think they feel about his followers? Those who
dead on. You're dead on, John.
Appreciate what he's doing.
I do appreciate what the president's doing, and that's not because I think he's perfect or that I'm not in sycophant land. I don't worship the president, but I definitely agree with you.
For our time. He's the perfect president for our time. He's the perfect man. God picked a man for this time, and it's Donald J. Trump to restore this nation. I believe it's God's will that he would restore this nation for his purposes and to give America another chance to acknowledge him and that more people will come to salvation. I know I don't want to be preachy or anything, but it's a fact.
Go ahead. I agree
God
with
is
you.
moving.
I feel the same way.
God stepped in. God stepped in for us. I prayed for a leader. I prayed for someone, and I didn't see him. I didn't see him coming. I didn't see who it would be, but the Lord lifted him up. And it was somebody we wouldn't expect. He took something that everyone thought was weak to confound the wise. And they were all wrong because God is right, and they are all wrong. And if God chooses a man and puts his hand upon him, no one can remove him. They can try, and we see what they're trying to do. They're trying every measure. They're trying the 25th Amendment. They're trying every measure, impeachment. They're trying to question his sanity, his fitness, and they're convicting all of us with him.
Well, I refuse to be convicted,
in the name
John.
of Jesus, I rebuke that.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for calling the show today and for listening from California. Really great to speak with you. My thing with this is obviously we want to be informed and we want to take the things that we learn as information and we want to pray over those things. So, please take the good news and the bad and just jot it down for your prayer list for when you go into your prayer closet. And I know that's the kind of old school term. Most people are praying on the fly, and that's the way you're supposed to do it. We're supposed to be continually speaking to our Heavenly Father, but specifically, we're supposed to make our petitions and requests known to Him. And so when we're concerned about something, it's not a time to worry, it's a time to pray. So we can take these concerns to Him, leave them there with Him, and then go on about the work that we have to do. As both of our callers today, Dave from San Francisco, John from California, have mentioned the hard work that we all have to do. We all have so many things to try to get done on our list. Giving these concerns to God, and then keep trucking, keep moving, keep doing what you have to do. So just want to remind you that this hour we also have Dr. Craig Albert, former president of the Georgia Political Science Association, and he's the graduate director of intelligence and security studies at Augusta University. So he is a professor as well as a doctor. He's going to come on and talk to us about just a number of hot button issues for today, because we want to keep up with the news as well. But I'm enjoying unpacking the things with Oprah Winfrey. Let me give you that Preborn Ministry number one more time, just in case you're just tuning in. We're partnering with Preborn just for this week. This ends at the end of the week. Help us out, 877-616-2396. AFR.net is where you can donate online. When we get back, we'll have our guest. And then third segment, we'll circle back around. I have a little bit more information for you on Oprah's counterfeit theology, the New Age spirituality that she's been practicing. You're not going to believe how much of what we see every day is encompassed by this. It's interesting stuff, and I don't want you to miss it, so stay right there.
Here's some great news. If you missed the deadline to sign up for health insurance, or more importantly, if you signed up for a plan that you're just not happy with, you still have a choice. It's called MediShare. MediShare is a Christian healthcare sharing program that's been around for 25 years, and they have hundreds of thousands of members all across the country. And get this, over the years, MediShare members have shared more than $1 billion of each other's medical bills. Best of all, you could save a lot of money with MediShare. The typical savings for a family is about $500 a month. Your savings could be more or less, but think about what you could do with that extra money. Think you're stuck with a high-cost health plan that doesn't have a lot to offer? Well, think again. You can join MediShare anytime, so call them today and check it out. Here's the number to find out more, and there's no pressure. They're super easy to talk to. 855-PSALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23. 855-PSALM-23.
Hello, this is Bishop Harry Jackson of Hope Christian Church in Beltsville, Maryland. Jesus said you would do greater works than he did. One of the signs in past seasons of revival has been in the great awakenings of the nation. Our spiritual history is punctuated by moments when people come to an awareness that their righteousness is as filthy rags before God. And in the early stages of most of the great awakenings and revivals of our generation has been a period of when people recognize their wretchedness without him. America, we got a long way to go because we do think we're all that. We have an entitlement spirit. I think as God is looking down at America, he sees that same kind of twistedness in the American church. What we need is a move of God that brings us back to the humble place of saying, what I've got, I don't deserve, but I received it because of the kindness and the largesse of a loving God. Now, see, I don't know about you, but I should be dead, not just of adult cancer. I should have been dead through foolishness in my teenage years. I don't know about you, but somehow God spared me. I'm somebody who owes God a debt of gratitude and service. Join us this Sunday morning at 6251 Amandale Road in Beltsville or on the web at thehopeconnection.org.
Sometimes I wonder if you're really listening, or if all of my words are just leaving my mouth floating up in the air. I've been told that I'm crazy, putting all of my faith into the arms of somebody else. Spend nights awake wondering if he's there.
All right, welcome back to the program, everyone. It's good to be with you today. Call lines are open at 866-963-2037. And it's my pleasure to welcome good friend of the program, Dr. Craig Albert, formerly of the Georgia Political Science Association and graduate director of intelligence and security studies at Augusta University. Thank you, Dr. Albert, for coming on today.
Of course, it's been a while. I missed it. I love coming on.
Oh, well, good to talk to you. So let's dig into these, because we have the salacious tabloid type stuff. Will Oprah Winfrey run for president? Who cares? No, that we don't need a new age spiritualist running for the presidency. And then this whole book, which I refuse to name, that purports to talk about the insider activities of the Trump administration. Again, something that's poorly sourced and not really a good use of our time. So you are coming on today to talk about what's at stake in North Korea in 2018. I'm dying to really unpack that and understand as an American, because they present a clear and present danger to our safety and really the safety of a lot of different nations in the world.
Yes, absolutely. They're one of the most serious existential threats to America, to our national security interests. Most individuals don't know that we are still technically in a state of war with North Korea. There's a peace armistice created after the Korean War, but we have never had a peace treaty, so we're technically still at war with North Korea, which is quite interesting. But They are an existential threat. They have nuclear missiles now, or they have nuclear weapons. We believe that they can put the nuclear material onto a missile and actually reach the continental United States, which is a clear, dire threat. Someone will say, well, that shouldn't be too much of a concern because other countries have that. Well, those countries are not rogue actors. They're within and normalized within the institutions of the United Nations and aren't perceived as being able to go rogue or to use a nuclear weapon. We don't know if that's the case with North Korea. We're not sure if they would act rationally according to mutually assured deterrence, for instance. Like, if you attack us, we're going to attack you, so we both blow up and die, so there's no sense in using nuclear weapons. We're not sure if that's the same operation procedure that the leadership works under. So it's a very scary situation. Not just for us, but South Korea is one of our most important partners in Asia, and we have military bases there. We have 30,000 soldiers deployed there, along with some of their family members, and they have about 10,000 artillery shells pointed at Seoul, South Korea. North Korea does, and at any given instant, they can launch those simultaneously, by the way, and achieve maximum catastrophic effectiveness in Seoul. So they are an extreme threat to the United States.
And what is our response to that? What kind of missile defense systems or other systems do we have that we can immediately deploy to thwart any attack of that nature?
So we have the THAAD defense system there. We have the surface-to-air defense that'll knock it down. The problem is although it's well tested, it is hitting a bullet with another bullet. So it's frightening to think that if they actually launch something, a nuclear that is, we would have to determine if we could hit that with another missile to knock it out. Would the warhead then detonate upon being blown up from another missile as well? What type of atmospheric catastrophic environmental damage would occur from that? Of course, that's better than it hitting an actual city or landing somewhere and causing some kind of land destruction, but that's still something we have to think about. For the artillery, there's not much we have. We have the same equipment that Israel uses against shells from landing, but that doesn't capture everything. It creates like a little iron dome, so when artillery shells come into that, you can get about 85 to 90% of them, and then, of course, we have the technology to automatically fire back from where the artillery was launched. We provide that equipment to Israel. They use it effectively against Hezbollah and Lebanon. But the problem is if they have 10,000 of those pointed and fire simultaneously at Seoul, South Korea, or our bases on the DMZ, if we miss 15% of 10,000 shells, you can see the calculated risk there is terrible. So the risk is all out war. What can we do is see. I mean, the only thing I can think of is let the leadership know that we mean business, and if he targets us, that's going to mean his destruction. And I think that's what President Trump's been doing, is very cautiously and carefully, and I think rightly so, letting Kim Jong-il know that if he attacks the United States, if he threatens the United States, he will be asking for a war. And Donald Trump has never said nuclear war, by the way. This is something that I've been upset with the media for. Are we going to go to nuclear war? Is President Trump threatening nuclear war? The United States has a policy of never using nuclear weapons first again. So we don't need to do anything like that. We have bunker-busting bombs that we can get if we needed to preempt North Korea. We have non-nuclear capable technology that would destroy their nuclear technology, hopefully, without going nuclear. So we don't even need to go to nuclear war. We could still have a conventional war, which is not the best scenario, but it might be the only scenario they understand. What I mean, they is their leadership, because they just don't have respect for the United States military or the United States foreign policy anymore. Much like Russia and Putin, the past decade and a half, that part of the world has lost their respect and their fear of the United States. You have to have one of those.
Yeah, I get that, but so just so we're clear to understand, because you've given us a lot of information there, and I appreciate that. But I'm thinking about this from regular, chick on the street, boots at the grocery store at 4:30 today. I'm a regular person walking around doing regular type stuff. And even though I was in the military and I was on active duty, I was raised in a military family, and I understand what you just shared. I need to be sure that I'm understanding we have technology that basically says wherever the attack launches from, we automatically launch a corresponding attack on the source site of the attack. But you didn't mention the capabilities that we have right now where whenever he has one of these missile test launches, which have become progressively more successful for him, we always know about those 4 and 5 days in advance because he has to move equipment around in order to prepare for the test launch. So theoretically, if we thought he was launching more than a test, we could preemptively strike the location that the test was coming out of or the attack was coming out of. We also have that capability.
Absolutely. And there's no missile threat on the continental United States or our allies from his missiles. We could take care of that instantaneously. Nobody in the United States should be worried about an attack from North Korea. Don't get me wrong. The power that Kim Jong-il has are those small artillery shells that would rain devastation on South Korea, perhaps on our forces in South Korea. That's the most serious threat, and that's the reason that he's been able to propel or prevent a preemptive attack from George W. Bush, even from Barack Obama, and certainly before the Bush era as well, is the fact that he has, or the regime has, the artillery, so the artillery, for the listeners that don't know, are the large bullets that are fired from projectiles, and if he has 10,000 of those lined up at once, that's his deterrent, because Seoul, South Korea, is one of the most densely populated cities in the world. So if all those land in Seoul, the civilian, it would just be an epidemic that we've never seen before, the type of catastrophic destruction that would occur. It would look like Dresden, or it would look as if he used a nuclear weapon, but it wouldn't be. And that is something we cannot 100% prevent. So the reason we don't attack his large missile sites now is because he has threatened to respond with small artillery fire in South Korea. And he has so much of it all aligned in his mountains and forests and well hidden that we could respond in kind afterwards, but we could not guarantee that we would hit all those shells out of the sky once he launches it. And that is a big enough deterrent. That's why this is a problem. It's really not his nuclear capability or projected capability. It's his small arms capability, his artillery that scares us the most.
And I understand that, and we would obviously want to protect our ally, South Korea, and not have mass casualties and cities completely wiped out in South Korea. But just to be understanding the completeness of the reaction, should he launch on South Korea or the United States, is the known response what we have told them what we will do, because the president said he'd be utterly destroyed? Is it not that we would we not flatten his country if he launched on us with anything? Or is that not the case?
I don't think that's the case. I believe we would respond proportionally. That's been the platform of the United States' national security policy towards North Korea for a while. We wouldn't want to escalate it too much where we inflicted so much damage that China felt like it had to get involved for some reason. We also wouldn't want to provide a reason for Russia to get overly scared at our power projection capabilities and start antagonizing the situation either.
But I thought we had a policy of mutually assured, So
if it would depend on what he launches and how much he launches. That's our policy. The president can choose to not go by that, and he has the executive action to choose to launch however he sees. So if Kim Jong-il launches just small artillery at South Korea, President Trump has every just righteous action and capability to flatten that entire facility, for instance, to flatten entire military bases, but that typically hasn't been the presumed response that we would do. Now, Trump has said he's not going to take the assumed response that America has had since the Korean War, that if we do anything, it will be regime change, it will be to wipe him out. But the doctrine, which is different than what Trump's speeches have said, is that it's a calculated response. It's a reasonable response in kind, which should deter a rational actor. But we don't know if he's an irrational actor.
So I think we would agree, Dr. Albert, that he is an irrational actor. And so my question to you is then, speaking strategically, is it not part of the reason why he doesn't take us seriously that we would have a measured or proportional response instead of us coming out and saying, if you go wild, wild west, we go wild, wild west, American style, the original Wild Wild West, meaning any kind of action from you, be it small artillery or anything else, would prompt us to use disproportionate military response in an effort to prevent you from killing large numbers of South Koreans or Americans. In other words, this isn't a conversation between us and China because we're not interested in hurting anyone in China. We're not interested in hurting anyone. But if you should strike out, you must understand that you would cease to be in existence if you made that decision. Wouldn't that stance be much more prohibitive from, it would basically prohibit him from doing anything because he would understand that the minute he presses a button, he's basically saying, I want to die.
Exactly. You're exactly correct on all counts. But he doesn't think that is our stance. And most of the world doesn't view that the American population would tolerate that type of response. So, so this is why, and a lot of this is because of President Barack Obama's easing of our footprint in the world. A lot of this, in fact, is what led to the rise of Al-Qaeda with Bill Clinton as president. You know, they would attack and he would pinprick attack back. He would attack proportionally back. And some argued that if we just went all out on bin Laden after he did something, 9/11 would have never happened. So we're in the same kind of debate now. Do we pinprick attack back, or do we go all out? The world for the past 15 years doesn't think that we have the stomach for a serious war, for a conventional war where we literally unleash our entire armed forces on another country. They don't think that we have the political will or the population's will for that. And so they've lost that respect. They don't believe that that's a calculated risk we're willing to take. And I think President Trump was trying to say, yes, I will take that chance. If you threaten us, we will flatten you out. Again, that goes against what the doctrine states, but Trump has every right to engage in executive action, executive orders, to respond strategically how he wishes. And so I think from a strategic... Would he not come
forward with the Trump Doctrine? So what I'm looking for is, a year into the Trump presidency, I'm looking for a shift, whether it's a minor shift or a major shift, but a shift that indicates what the Trump Doctrine is. Because like it or not, we're living under the Obama Doctrine. Before that, we had the Bush Doctrine. Now that we're a year into the Trump presidency and he's already permitted the mother of all bombs to be reintroduced into the operational space for use by our military, would we not now say we perhaps have now seen a taste of the Trump Doctrine and that it is a radical departure from the Obama Doctrine?
Oh, absolutely. I think so. He hasn't specified it yet. He kind of did with his national security strategy that's been teased a little bit in the American First policy, but we're still unclear as to what type of response it would be and how strong of a response it would be. I'm willing to venture that Trump would be willing to bet a strategic all-out attack against Kim Jong-il, and I think Kim Jong-il is starting to understand that. But it's unclear as if, does he really understand this? I think this is what is the catalyst between the South Koreans and the North Koreans starting to talk, is that they understand that Trump means business and that he's not going to tolerate any of this any longer, that if they pose a threat, we're going to take care of that threat. This doctrine isn't written yet, and he hasn't defined the Trump Doctrine, but I bet your hypothesis is correct that this is what it would be.
Well, I hope I'm right. I don't relish the idea of going to war with any country, but the point of having the largest military on the face of this planet is to project strength and to prevent bad actors from taking actions that would harm individuals anywhere. And so since we're paying for it, I want what we're paying for. Thank you so much for coming on today. Excellent discussion, Dr. Craig Albert. We'll be back with more right after this.
Facebook now allows for 58 gender identifications.
Here's what you missed on Airing the Addisons.
When Target says that however you identify, that's the bathroom, the changing facility you get to use. Now, it's amazing though because they still only have two. You understand? They only have a male bathroom and a female bathroom. But the ideology that they have espoused says that there's like 50 or 60, depending on what you read. You understand? So if they're really like looking out for the entire transgender community, if they're really looking out for, you know, the new wave of the way people choose to identify, then they'd have a lot more stalls than that. But the reality is that they know that this stuff is foolishness.
Right. Tune in weekday mornings, 6 to 9 Central on Urban Family Talk.
This stuff is foolishness, y'all.
Coming next week on The Dwelling Place. Pastor Al Pittman continues to walk us through the Bible, line by line and verse by verse, to let God show us just how timeless His truth is. That's next week on The Dwelling Place.
Victory McIntosh.
Early will I seek thee, O Lord. Man, it's something about when you start your morning off right with Abba, Father. I'm telling you, will the enemy come? Of course, he's going to do his job. But it should motivate you even more. Man, I got to stay connected to the vine of Jesus. How do you do that? By getting into the Word of God. You got to do it.
Tune in to Word on the Street with Victory McIntosh. Saturdays at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk.
More than 1 million believers have signed the pledge to boycott Target, and we urge you to join them. The American Family Association opposes the policy of Target allowing transgenders into the bathroom of their choice. Here's AFA President Tim Wildman.
There's a reason why we've had male and female separation in restrooms and fitting rooms for all of mankind's history.
A policy which allows men into women's restrooms and fitting rooms is not right, nor is it safe.
I just can't see corporate executives at Target or anywhere else sitting around a table going, you know, guys, I think we need to open up our women's restrooms for men.
Visit afa.net to learn more and sign the pledge to boycott Target. Don't spend your money at Target until they stop putting our family members at risk with this dangerous, politically correct policy.
Protect your wives, daughters, your sisters, your moms. Don't shop at Target. Let them know.
That's afa.net.
Let me ask you a couple of policy questions on we talked about Section 702 of the FISA with the CIA director. You have held up a nomination of John Demers, and you're also talking about filibustering this. Why?
702 is supposed to get information on foreigners, and so we have a lower than constitutional standard. We say, well, the Constitution doesn't apply to people in other countries, and I agree with that. So we collect a massive amount of information on foreigners, but they talk to Americans. So after you gather millions and billions of bits of information, turns out there's a lot of Americans in the database. What we don't want to happen is that domestic law enforcement, policemen and FBI are looking in a database that was collected without constitutional protections, and let's say they decide to prosecute medical marijuana people in Colorado, which is legal in Colorado, but now the federal government's talking about changing their policy and going after them. What if they're searching a database that was collected on foreigners to get incidental information on medical marijuana in Colorado? I have a real problem with that. So they should have to get a warrant before they look at that. And really none of that information should be used for domestic crime because it was gathered with a less than constitutional standard.
All right. And that was Dr. Rand Paul, also senator from the great state of Kentucky. And he's talking about the FBI bias against President Trump being why we need FISA reform. And that's why he's blocking the nominee. Again, sometimes it feels like when we're talking about these subjects and we listen to the procedural, shenanigans that are going on and how they're blocking this one and they're moving on that one and they're opening up hearings on this one. And it can be a bit much because as I just said to Dr. Albert, I'm wearing the boots that will soon be in the grocery store right after this show gets over. I mean, we're all living in the real world where we need to pump gas, buy groceries, pick kids up, drop kids off, and, replace your dishwasher. You got stuff breaking, you got stuff you got to get done. And so a lot of these things, while they're of the utmost importance are of zero importance, because you have to get things done and you have to do what you got to do. That's what I'm trying to do here on this show, is we're trying to boil it down to what it is, so you have the information, you know what to pray about, you know what to kind of call your representatives about when you have that spare time or when the issue is really pressing, and then you can move on. Because part of the reason we spend time a couple times a year, every 2 years, every 6 years, electing these people is that we want them to go and take care of these procedural things and do these things so we don't have to worry about them. But in the end, anything that is unmanaged or not paid attention to is going to run wild and rampant. And that's why we have to spend some of our time focused on understanding what these people are doing. And, you know, it is more fun to watch the decorating shows. I happen to like watching Hometown. I don't know if you guys have caught that program yet. Hometown. It's this show about the Napiers. They're a young couple who moved back to their hometown of Laurel, Mississippi. And they're rehabbing it one house at a time, trying to get other young families to move back into this small town to revitalize it, because they believe small town America is the future of this country. And you can disagree on that. Obviously, we need cities, we need small towns, we need rural areas, we need suburbs. We need it all. But it's wonderful to see they have a passion and excitement for it. And when you want to unplug and you're using television to do that, I mean, obviously you can read, you can do many different things. But if you want to catch, you know, about a 40-minute break from that type of stuff without the commercials, because, you know, I can't stand the commercials anymore. I only watch Amazon and Netflix, things that don't have commercials. And so I'll, you know, catch that episode, comes on once a week. And it's just a great thing to watch them ask the couple what they want. Then they take the house. First they decide which house, then they rehab it and they put things in it that, you know, go along with the people. And then they show you the end result. And it happens in 40 minutes. So they're spending 5, 6, 8 weeks on rehabbing these places, but you get to see it from start to finish in 30 or 40 minutes, which is fantastic. So you get to unplug. But the fact is, as much as we want to unplug and be completely disconnected from politics, it's here, it's happening, and it impacts us directly. No other time has it been more evident recently than in the legislation that was just passed by the president about the tax reform. That's actually going to show up in paychecks across this country in February, where every American is going to see they're either saving money or they're not, and how much it is. That is as real as it gets when it comes to elected officials taking an action and then you seeing the result. But this is happening 24 hours a day, really, because the things are being implemented after they've been passed and, you know, turned into law, or rules have been made and accepted. These things are happening all the time. So we do want to be informed. And so I want to get to the remainder of this. If you want to call in before the end of the show, there's still time. 866-963-2037. I want to finish up this this phone call, or this audio bit. Rand Paul actually describes the need for oversight in the reauthorization of FISA as well, and that's the Foreign Intelligence Court, the FISA court, and it's number 2.
Well, we'll try to stop them. You know, the people on the other side, the CIA director and others, they want permanent reauthorization, no reform. And when you ask them, are you using this for domestic crime? There's a little bit, you know, they kind of say, well, we don't do it very often, but they won't tell you whether they're sort of looking at the information and then not presenting it in court, but using that information to develop what's called parallel construction, develop cases. They want just permanent reauthorization, which to me means no more oversight by Congress. The reason we need more oversight is that people, as Madison said, men are not angels. And we've seen recently how we've had some people in the FBI that had bias against the president. We also have seen now people in the Department of Justice who were married to people that were doing opposition research on Trump. So you can see how people are human and bias could enter into this. And the history of the CIA and the FBI are not without blemish. You know, the Hoover years are a great tarnish. We also had civil rights activists in the 60s illegally spied upon. We had Vietnam protesters illegally spied upon. And we had this great to-do, the Church Commission back in the 70s. And FISA was supposed to rein that in. But now many of us, Senator Wyden and I, have in a bipartisan way looked at this and said, my goodness, we have to defend the Americans' right to privacy. And right now, we're sort of a minority in the Senate. In the House, though, it's close to 50-50.
So what we're looking at this point is an admission by a senator, sitting senator, that in the past we've seen abuses of these types of powers that have been given to Congress, given to certain courts in order to make Americans safe, in order to ensure the safety of Americans. You know, you've heard these little phrases before, and these powers have been abused. And so he's looking for ways to rein in those powers and to ensure that these abuses don't continue forward. And I agree with him wholeheartedly. And really, who better than Senator Rand Paul to execute these actions? Yesterday, we listened to audio of him describing the excruciating ordeal that he went through after being attacked on his property by a neighbor, a politically motivated attack, after he survived yet another politically motivated attack back when Representative Majority Whip Scalise was shot down on that baseball field in Virginia, where they were practicing for their, kind of ceremonial little baseball game. So we know that there's corruption, there's wrongdoing, there's people, kind of executing on the wrong side all over the place. And I think it's upsetting, but it is what it is. Sin is in this world. What can we do? So that being out of the way, I wanted to give you a couple of ways for you to kind of recognize the New Age spirituality that has really been propagated and spread all over our country. It's in everything, and you may not recognize it as such. And so this isn't an indictment of you. This is not me saying you're practicing New Age spirituality, but there are some ways that we can tell if something we're engaging in or something we're seeing is influenced by this kind of it's Oprah Winfrey's new jam, or her new old jam, because she's been engaging in it for quite a while, decades. So you'll see things like the spiritual meaning of colors, numerology, the meaning of numbers, broken glass, broken spirits, Edgar Case's story of Anna, mother of the Virgin Mary, Feng Shui, I can never pronounce that correctly, career tips, the wisdom of silver birch. So, the elevation of like tree bark and oils and stuff to like a spiritual element. There's even some kind of mystical thing they're trying to apply to eye floaters. If you have, the things that you can see when you move your eye around, it looks like something is floating in your field of vision. It's actually damage to your eye that happens over time as we age. People have now begun to try to associate eye floaters with some kind of mystical New Age type thing. Buddhism, obviously, spiritual traveling, singularity, which is something that I'm not even looking into exactly what the definitions of all of these things, but when you hear these terms, know that it's New Age spirituality. People are dabbling in it, they're sharing it, they're trying to kind of normalize it. And so what spiritualists, or people who practice New Age spirituality, they believe that spirituality is the recognition and identification with your true spiritual essence, that true spirituality comes only through the discovery of your true purpose and the conscious direction of your lifestyle towards its fulfillment. So it is inward looking, it's focused on the self. And remember, as Christians, we are to be, heavenly minded. We're to look towards the Savior. We're to yield to the kingdom. In other words, our Father in heaven. That's where we're supposed to put our focus. We're to go into it with repentance and become saved, and then move forward from there. And there's lots of things for us to do after that. If we're only inward looking and focusing on ourselves, there's certain to be more problems, because you can't fix yourself. You can work hard, you can improve your habits, but you have to leave the change that you want to see in yourself. You leave that up to God, and you will change. You will grow spiritually. You will change. So it's also the heavy focus on meditation. Now, I'm not talking about when we're meditating on God's word. I'm talking about meditation where you're just doing a meditation practice, and it's oils and scented this and that and candles, but there's no God focus. You're not focused on our Heavenly Father. The divination of dreams, spiritual politics, self-help sanctums. These are all symptoms and terminology that surround the New Age spirituality. Guard your hearts. Don't be taken in by these things. They can't bring benefit to you. And it's best for us all to recognize our true source and to follow him. It's Jesus Christ. There it is. I said it. I know that's offensive to some, but I don't care. I'm in it to win it. And I want to make sure that we're saying the things that need to be said. The truth, the truth, the truth, the truth, the truth, the truth. Consume it, understand it, and it'll set you free. Literally. So there was that. And then there's been many times where Oprah Winfrey has been, hey, you're not a Christian because you're practicing New Age, this or that. And then she'll hear about it and she'll come out, and she's done this on numerous occasions. She'll come out and say, oh, but sorry, I am a Christian. Yeah, I don't know what you were just talking about. I don't know what you think you heard me say, but I am a Christian. I believe in God just like you do. I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe all faiths are equal. I believe that God is a consciousness, but I'm still a Christian just like you. So it gets a little upsetting because you might be thinking to yourself, wow, I mean, do we have to have this going on with you? Can't you just talk about other things? And I think that's, for me, the part about Oprah Winfrey and this whole story that really, it gets to me the most is that if you go back to the earlier shows, I remember those because that's back when I was a fan and before she really exposed her true thoughts on Christianity. It was, the shows were about people. The shows were about, people who did extraordinary things, people who had terribly heartrending stories, but still came through difficult circumstances. Oprah's show would be about issues facing the country. She did, kind of do that self-help thing. It was, weight loss, healthy living, healthy eating, home organization, decor, Hollywood stars. It was all the kind of stuff you would expect back then from daytime television. And it's almost as if she ran out of stuff to talk about and she decided, I really need to help these people. All of these problems stem from, a lack of spirituality, if you will. But instead of pointing people towards Christ, which with a platform like the one she had, with an audience share like the one she had, and the kind of command and control she enjoyed because of her ratings, she could literally get on television and say anything. That's the kind of power she had. And it wasn't just any old television. It wasn't some new cable startup or some tiny, little channel or something that was barely watched. She was on one of the largest networks and she had full autonomy over what went on the show. In the beginning, she had producers, she had people telling her. Then once the success came, she literally had people, everybody's dying to get on her program. That was the place to be, that couch, that chair. Why else do you think Tom Cruise, the ultimate in self-promotion, the ultimate in marketing and PR for his business, which is himself, his Hollywood career, why do you think he chose to announce his love for Katie Holmes on Oprah's couch? Because it was the best place to get the word out. I tell you how we can beat this thing. If every listener in this audience decided that they were going to tell the truth about Jesus Christ on a regular basis, we could beat Oprah Winfrey hands down, because anybody who knows the Savior in their heart, that has come to a real and true knowledge of Jesus Christ and his saving power, can spot Oprah Winfrey a mile off and will run in the other direction. So let's do that. God bless you. Have a great evening tonight. Lord willing, I'll be right back here tomorrow with more Stacy on the Right.